And welcome back to Everyman Driver and another episode of In the Rear View Mirror, where we go beyond the initial drive and review of a pair of vehicles. And this week, it's a pair of Acuras. Alex?
Yeah, we're talking about the 2013 Acura RDX all-wheel drive and the MDX all-wheel drive.
We had to wait a few months before we have both of these vehicles. So in the video you're about to see, we have one that there was no snow whatsoever on the ground, and the most recent one, the MDX, there's lots of snow on the ground. So bear with us. Everyman Driver starts now. Okay, Alex, let's begin with the 2013 RDX all-wheel drive. And one of the funniest lines you said in the initial review is that all these vehicles out there have all these numbers and letters, but I like to have a vehicle that has a real name.
The competition for this car is just a bunch of letters and numbers, including the Audi Q5, Mercedes-Benz GLK, and the BMW X5. If you want a more affordable option, you might want to look at the Volkswagen Tiguan. Not only is it priced significantly less than the models listed here, it's got a real name.
What was your impression of that car?
Yeah, and I'm not sure if that was the Shod as well, the SH all-wheel drive. I call it the Shod. I really liked that car. I like both of these SUVs, and I think the theme between the RDX and the MDX really is they're very, very similar cars. One is just bigger than the other. And a lot of manufacturers, I feel like, are heading in that direction where it's really just a miniature version of, you know, the little SUV is just a miniature version of the big one, and almost everything is the same. If you look at interior layout, exterior styling, you know, the way that they drive, a lot of those things are really similar. But I thought for a kind of a mid-size SUV, I mean, I would actually consider buying the RDX.
There was about a $15,000 difference between the RDX and the MDX, talking about 40 grand versus about 55 grand.
Yeah.
The engine differences, we're looking at, you know, 273 horsepower in the smaller one and up to 300 in the MDX. I'm just not sure $15,000 plus you get a third row of seats. Is it worth paying that extra money for the MDX? I don't know. Maybe not for me. But again, the RDX was a little bit smaller.
Right. For me, I absolutely agree with you. I do not think for an extra 15 grand you're getting, you know, that much more car in the MDX. I mean, I suppose if you've got a family with 5 kids, well, now all of a sudden that third row of seats looks pretty appealing. You're probably, if you've got 5 kids, you're not going to be in one of those anyway. I agree. You know, you do get some cool things in the MDX, like you get the fold-down DVD player in the back with the wireless headphones, which is sweet. You know, it is a little kind of plusher ride. The RDX is sportier than the MDX, but 15 grand, that's a lot of money. And like you said, things like the engine, I mean, you're getting 25 more horsepower. That RDX is clearly going to be faster than its big brother.
One area that we both agreed on is that cargo room could be better, and leg room was not fantastic whatsoever in both of those vehicles. I know when you sat behind me in the MDX, which we assume would be a bigger vehicle, meaning more room, there wasn't a lot of room, at least for your knees.
I was shocked. It's been a couple months now since we reviewed the RDX, but as I remember it, the RDX had more legroom than the MDX. Not the same, more. That MDX, I could not believe. And you're not enormous. You're, you know, an average sized guy. And I was sitting behind you, and my feet were pressed up against that seat in a full-size $55,000 big, heavy SUV. That was inexcusable.
And then when you move back to the cargo room, I remember talking about how the back area of the RDX wasn't quite flush when you pushed back the back row of seats.
Yeah.
So it wasn't flush enough. So in a way, you're kind of sacrificing some cargo room. Now with the MDX, with that third row of seats, they go down, and so both last 2 rows go down, and there seemed to be a lot more room there. And I like that. And it didn't seem to be very high off the ground, the tailgate, when you were to enter the back of the vehicle, the tailgate.
Yeah, you do get a ton of usable space in the MDX, which again is what you'd expect. I mean, this is a big car. I think most of the time, though, again, I think 90% of the time, if not more, just like you're never going to have 5 kids, or very rarely have 5 kids in the back where you'd need the MDX, I think very rarely are you going to have enough stuff that with the seats folded down, the RDX isn't going to give you enough room. I mean, you and I like to ride bikes. maybe you can't throw a bike in there, but I just feel like, man, 15 grand is an entry-level car. I just don't see there being enough difference to justify it.
That third row, as much as I like the MDX, that third row was almost useless when it comes to putting someone back there. There was almost no room for your legs, and if you did get back there, your knees would be pretty much high because you're sitting low. There's just not a lot of room. So why not elongate the vehicle for that? If you're going to pay 15 grand more, make the vehicle a little bit longer so I can use those last two seats.
Yeah, and really, I think those last two seats are designed for kids. I mean, I think it's, I don't know that, but I've got to assume that those third seats are either for emergencies where, all your passengers have had a little too much drink and you need to give them a ride, or, it's carpool time. Those are carpool seats.
Okay, gas mileage.
Yeah.
Fuel economy was much better in the RDX, as you would expect. We're looking at, it had 19 in the city and 27 on the highway. The MDX was closer to 16 in the city and 21 on the highway. And you have to attribute that to the larger engine?
Well,
we had a 3.5 versus a 3.7 liter. We had 273 horsepower versus 300 horsepower. V6?
Yeah, it's V6 either way, and obviously the engine is going to play a part in that. Probably a bigger part is just the drag coefficient. I mean, the aerodynamics, it's just a bigger vehicle, bigger frontal profile. And the other thing is the Acura MDX has a lot more electronics and gizmos. And people don't realize that all of those electronic gizmos, even though they're electric, ultimately that is costing you fuel economy. And so things like that DVD player and the air-conditioned seats, all that stuff adds up. So it all plays a factor. Although if you're paying 55 grand for a car, let's be honest, you're probably not really going to care about 2 or 3 extra, miles per gallon.
I agree. And remember, our Everyman Driver ownership scale, we both gave the MDX the same rating of 48 months.
Yeah.
Yet on the RDX, you were more closer to 60 months, and I was on the lower end of 48 to 60 months.
Yeah, I do. I mean, in general, I like the RDX better. It just is more car for the money. I think 95% of the time the RDX is going to give you everything that you want, especially with that bad rear leg room in the MDX. I just don't see for most people where that's needed.
Well, if you want to see a full review of both the 2013 RDX and MDX, just go to, or actually we'll put some annotations right there, click on those, and you can watch those full reviews, or just do a common search on our YouTube channel. Until next time, for In the Rearview Mirror, I'm Dave Erickson, this is Alex DeFries. We'll see you next time.